the chat. As you know, I love to speak to everyone from a lot of racing and breeding industries, and marketing, and more specifically social media, is a big part of racing stables in this day and age. Basically, if you haven't got a social media account, you're not reaching all the people you need to reach. And joining me today from Griffith to Kock Racing is their sales and marketing manager, Corey Smith. G'day, Corey. How are you, mate?
Hey, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. I know you're a big supporter of what I do. I'm all about showing racing in a very positive light.
Yeah, it's obviously, well, my background, I guess I started out in the horse racing industry by running a webinar. That's actually how I got involved, and the main reason for that was I thought there was a bit of a gap in terms of people getting information and having contact. And it's an industry where, as you know, you can speak to so many different people in so many different roles quite easily, and the access is there. But allowing the public to have that access, I think, is a good thing. And I think what you're doing is great. So
thank you very much. But you actually come from a soccer/futsal background originally, don't you?
Yeah, that's true. So 30 years of my life, Ben. So, from when I was 5 years old, I was kicking a ball around, and I was lucky enough to have a fairly successful career without making it to the top. And then after my playing career, I took up coaching. I got to travel the world as a player. I got to wear the green and gold as a futsal player on 11 occasions. And I got to see a lot of the world. And then I went into the administrative side and took tours across the world. Every year I went away for a month to the UK taking tours and various other places. Went to a World Cup as well as a coach. And then coached locally in the state leagues for outdoor soccer as well in senior football. But, yeah, COVID came along and put a handbrake on, or certainly indoor sport and certainly travel. So all the travel that was part of my job evaporated. And I thought, well, what an opportune time to get involved in horse racing, which I've obviously liked for a long time.
And COVID definitely, I think, introduced a lot of people that hadn't previously been involved in the sport to racing, because it was the only sport that was able to keep going, really, wasn't it?
It was, and I'm such a sporty person that, I think probably all that spare time we had during COVID meant that we did a lot more study into everything. And I obviously started the series of webinars, Horse Racing Tell Me How, and that kick-started me with a bit of networking in the key places, and stumbled across Robbie, and obviously, he put an offer to me, and I thought long and hard, and I thought, you know what, why not give it a go? And I think a lot of people during COVID made some big life decisions, and that was a life decision for me, and I think it was a good one. So far, so good.
And what's it like to work for Robbie Griffith and obviously Matt de Kock too, who's linked with Mike de Kock, who's one of the world's top trainers?
It's very different every day, that's for sure. So, they're very different characters, Robbie and Matt. They complement each other really well, but they're also very different. And I guess I'm closer in age to Matthew, so I sort of see him as probably a mate these days, and we do a lot of things together. And then Robbie's my boss, but I have a great relationship with both of them, and Robbie and Sharani are fantastic to work for. In my opinion, the good thing about this role is that although it started in sales and marketing, I'm now officially the racing manager here. But that role encompasses so many different aspects of the business, and I'm quite fortunate in that I'm learning in so many aspects of the business, whereas in maybe some other stables or some other organisations, you may not get exposed to so many things, whereas Robbie sort of exposes me to everything, which has been fantastic for me because I have a thirst for knowledge.
And it's also probably good the fact that you can be quite hands-on and learn a lot about the business away from just being at the stables every day, because some of these bigger stables, you just wonder, gee, you've got a lot of people working for you, but what do all these people actually do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's good because it is hands-on. Like I come in once a week. Do the rest. I work from home, but I'm in constant contact with Robbie and Matt. Sometimes, they get frustrated because I'm always chasing them up with different things that we need for social media or for owners or whatever. But I guess it's my job to put them front and centre, my job to keep the social media wheel spinning, my job to make sure that all our clients are enjoying their time and all our owners are having a good experience. And I guess that's my niche. And then obviously when it comes to the horses and the expertise, I mean, Robbie's been in the industry for 30 odd years and is probably one of the most well spoken about trainers. I don't think many people have a bad word to say about him, and he's just a gentleman the whole time within the industry. And then obviously Matthew's come in with, worldwide experience. So my skill set probably fits the team. Doesn't necessarily wouldn't probably fit with all stables, but fits perfectly in the niche that we have.
And Corey, as someone who looks after the sales and marketing for a racing stable, just how important is it to put out content and fresh content regularly?
I think it's probably in this day and age, it's probably a minimum expectation. I think owners, the expectation is that they'll get a lot of information about their horse and footage and all the updates and obviously apps like Prism and those types of things. But social media, people follow a lot on what racing stables are doing online. And if you don't have content, then you are in a situation where you're not in the front of people's mind when they're making decisions on where they might go and race their horses or get involved in ownership. But I think most businesses around the world, you probably wouldn't be able to be successful without some sort of presence in terms of marketing and building a brand. You need a brand. Without a brand, I use I guess it all comes back to fashion. So you can go and buy a T-shirt at Kmart that potentially is the same standard of T-shirt that you would buy at Rebel Sport that has a Nike tick on it, but you would pay more for the one that has the Nike tick on it because it's such a big brand and it has a lot of exposure in the marketplace. So if you think about it that way, then it's not too different. If you don't have exposure in the marketplace and you're not building your brand, then you probably won't be able to sell your product. And I guess you will also always see our stable at the sales or at the races dressed in Griffith to Kock gear and well presented.
And you talk about the gear where that's produced by a previous guest and a friend of mine, and Brett Kock, fan favourite. He's going great guns, and just the quality of the gear he produces, it's excellent.
Yeah, we funnily enough, we put a social media post out last week, and apparently he tells me that they got inundated with people gathering their things. So there's a good example. If you're not putting it up and there's no content on social media or in the marketplace, then people tend to forget about it. So we put a post up, just a reminder, last week and sent out to our clients, and that generated interest in the gear. I also had a couple of clients come in to visit their horse this morning, and they had a young child, I think he was 8 or 9, and he was wearing his Griffith to Kock gear with his fan faves logo and the name of his horse on there. So, I mean, it's great to have, and it's probably something that hasn't been done. So they've jumped in, just like you have with the webinars and podcasts. They've jumped into a space that probably wasn't really active.
And you talk about active. I mean, I was at Sandown Wednesday, and I know Ma Eustace had a runner, and I saw this little boy running around upstairs in the owners, and I saw the back of him, and he had the silks on, and on the back he had the name of his parents' horse. Like, that's another way, even though it's a little kid, someone will see and go, oh, what a way to engage people in racing.
Yeah, I think the thing is, the more we can engage, like things like gear and having a T-shirt with your, you would soccer or footy, you'd get, I have a Manchester United shirt at home. Anyone who supports them would have one. If you support, whatever AFL team, you'd wear an AFL top. Say Jack Gunston, who's an owner with us, if you support Hawthorn, you'd wear a Hawthorn top, whereas racing probably doesn't have that as much. But for kids, it's a great way to engage them and also get your brand awareness out with the younger generation, I think, because they might want to wear a beanie to whatever it might be. It's just another way to put your brand out there, whether it's, can be anything really. So.
And in terms of the sales, Corey, being able to buy a horse is easier than ever, considering just how much video content, x-rays and other information is available for free. Even if you're not buying, you just want to look at the confirmation of the horse you can't make for the sales, jump on the sales company website and there's videos and photos there, for example.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic for owners who follow and want to look through the catalogues online and things like. But I do think I still think there's no substitute for the feeling you get when a horse walks out of the horse's box at the sale. So, and it's an unexplainable feeling. So I've been lucky enough to look around the sales with Robbie, Matthew, and Matthew's dad, Mike, as well as Peter Ford, Joey Ramsden and Steph. But also I've spent time with Paul Moroney. You know, I've spent time with these people at the sales who are good judges, Troy Corstens, all of these guys, and they can all explain what they look for in a horse, but there's something unexplainable that they get when a horse comes out, which is the feeling they have about that horse. So it's great that we have all the content, and I think that adds to it immensely, and it means that you can buy with a lot more confidence. But I also think that there still is that, you know, the old horseman's feeling for a horse, which is the most important thing. You need to have a good feeling about the horse to buy it.
And you're based out there at Cranbourne as a stable. Those facilities are world class and they're constantly expanding, obviously, with quite a few trainers having moved out there because there's no longer on-course training at Caulfield.
Yeah, it's the best facility I've seen by a long way. I live in Ballarat, actually, Ben, and travel down once a week. So obviously Ballarat is one of the best facilities in the country, but Cranbourne probably is another step above that. It just has so many options for the horses. And the biggest benefit for Cranbourne, for a trainer like Robbie, who's been here a long time, is that there's more and more options for horses. So you talk about it. I was actually talking to an owner last week who that particular horse needed a change of environment. And in days gone by, you would need to move that horse to another stable to get a change of environment, because you might need to go to the beach, or you might need to be trained out of a paddock, or whatever it might be. Whereas now we have all of those facilities at Cranbourne, with whether it's at the training facility where we have all the tracks and everything else, or with Robbie's farm that's nearby, they can be trained out of a paddock now, or they can be trained at the beach. We have obviously all of those options available to us, which in the past we probably didn't. So it's almost, we're trying to get to the stage where it's a, one-stop shop for horse ownership with Griffith to Kock.
And you mentioned the farms. More and more trainers now are realising just how advantageous it is to be able to have your own sculling farm, but also possibly even doing your own pre-training as well with these kind of farm setups.
Yeah, well, the big benefit for us is obviously Joey Ramsden is running the farm for us. So you've got a Group 1 winning trainer, a multiple Group 1 winning trainer that's doing the pre-training. So it's not anybody doing that with the horse. It's a genuine top-class trainer who's going to have those horses ready to come back into work. Or they might be trained fully there. The other thing is, you've also, by having your own farm, and with it being so close, you have a constant stream of, so we have a WhatsApp group, we have a constant stream of information coming through every day from Joey and Steph on how those horses are coming along. And you're always able to keep an eye on the horses when they're spelling. Whereas I guess, obviously you'd like to have that everywhere, but unfortunately that's our core business now. So when our horses are spelling, because that's run by Robbie and Shirani, it's very easy to access anything they need to and keep an eye on everyone's horses. So it's definitely going to add to the business, and we probably haven't seen the fruits of that purchase yet, but that's certainly going to come very soon, I think, now that Joey's doing the pre-training there as well.
And you mentioned Steph. Steph is Steph Granzella, and she's been in and around the industry for a long time. I first met her when she was doing a bit of bit spotting in English. Got a very good bloodstock brain, that lady.
Yes, very good. So, all vital parts of the team. And you would have noticed at the sales, Ben, and I think a lot of people have noticed that the Griffith to Kock team is constantly growing, and there's always a big team at the sales, and there's always a lot of input. And when we purchase horses, there'll be 6 people around the table who all have to agree before anyone bids on that horse. So you're leaving nothing to chance. So if you're not going to buy a horse because one person likes it, you're buying it because all 6 like it. And then involved in that process is myself, who, to be honest, when it comes to the horses, probably has less say. But in terms of what we can sell that horse for, or what our market is doing, or what our clients are looking for, then that would be mine. But all of that meshes into one. You might have Peter Ford doing the pedigree work on it. Obviously, Matthew and Robbie, based on what they want to do training-wise and which races they want to target, and all of that comes together at the sales, and it's quite a big process behind the scenes.
And you talk about what the marketing and the sales, putting it out there with the social media. You've also produced this. So you were giving this out when we last caught up at Cranbourne, and I reckon this is really cool what you've done, because it's quite glossy, but at the same time too, it's in very basic, easy to understand language, because there's a lot of people that are probably getting into ownership for the first time. They may not understand all the jargon.
Yeah, I'd love to take the accolades for that, Ben, but I didn't produce that. I provided some of the content for it and helped out, but Sarah, who actually used to work for us, puts those books together. So she actually puts them in a hard copy and gets some of the stories together. But something that the stable's done, we do it twice a year. We offer that to our clients. And it's just, I think a lot of people like to get a book and read it, a bit like the ANZ Bloodstock and the TDN stuff. Sometimes it's nice to read it in paper form. We try and do that twice a year. So we obviously have our regular emails which go out, but quite often, some people will get those emails and read them, and some people prefer to get a hard copy. And so we try to cater for both.
There's been a lot of debate about the staff shortage in racing recently, obviously because of COVID and what have you, because we rely so much on overseas labour, if you want to put it that way. In your experience, are there enough opportunities for people to obtain work in the industry, like people here in Australia?
I think there's a load of opportunities in racing, but we're going back to the same pond all the time for those workers. So I was having a conversation this morning. How many workers in the industry do we know that came from non-horse racing backgrounds? And it's quite, I haven't done any study on this, but I would guess that it's a small percentage. Most people would have had a mum or a dad. They would have ridden horses when they were younger, whether it was racing or not, or they would have had some involvement in horses growing up with their parents. And unfortunately, it's probably for an industry that's so large, we don't engage with the school system, we don't engage with universities, and we don't engage with all of those youngsters, so the kids coming through. We don't engage with them because a lot of the marketing in race, this is just my opinion, by the way, but a lot of the marketing in racing is surrounded by wagering. And we obviously know how important that is, but I think that there could be a lot more done in terms of the education space of what the racing industry is and how easy it is to get involved in for youngsters. So not necessarily targeting people that are at the age that they can go and work, because they probably already have a set idea of what they think racing is, or a perception. We could change that perception of racing if we actually get into the schools and that type of thing, and go into the schools with jockeys and with stories of the horse, and try and make the horses the star rather than, what odds that horse is. So I remember there was a horse that ran in the Warrnambool Carnival, would have been last year, which was a horse of Matt Kamani's, ran at 60 to 1 or something and won. And then I remember there was Hal Borson when he won at 51 to 1 at Flemington. And the story was surrounding Luna Fox winning the Australian Guineas. The story was about what the big odds they were. When the reality is they've just won a big race. The story for me should be the horse. So the story on Hal Borson, in my opinion, should be, that he had some soundness issues in his previous prep, was struggling a little bit, and that Robbie and Matthew turned him around and have got him into group races, and he's now winning and performing at Group 1 level. And the story should be about the horse and the trainer and the strapper and the people behind the horse, and not what odds they were. And I think I think there's a place for both, but I think there's certainly a lot more they could do in the marketing space to help fill the void in staff shortages by getting that next rung of youngsters coming through and loving horse racing for the horses and the people. Does that make sense? I've probably got a long way through.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Corey. I couldn't agree more. I work on social media and on the racing.com all the time. I mean, there is a purpose with wagering, like you say, but at the same time too, we do need to market it, but we do need to look at marketing, I think, away from just spring carnival and autumn carnival time. It's all well and good, and we both love a party, we both love a good time and meeting people, but at the same time too, you go in the winter to the track, there's no one there. There's got to be a more concerted effort. There's got to be a more concerted effort, I think, to market it all the time, but away from that party atmosphere as well. Keep that marketing, that part of it. But there's other parts of the industry that should be celebrated too.
Yeah, and I think, once again, if we go back to, say, footy, AFL is huge in Australia, and I'm a soccer fan, but AFL is huge. But I live in Ballarat, and Western Bulldogs do a lot of engagement in Ballarat. So for example, they're in the schools and they'll be teaching kids how to handball or whatever they might be doing. They're not talking about you can get these odds on me getting 30 touches or things like that. So there's no reason why, and I know that there's an undertone and a perception that the government and schooling system might not want horse racing in schools because of gambling. But if we can educate that next generation that the racing industry is not just wagering, then it's no different than any sport because there's wagering in all sports. So for me, I think it's, we need to be marketing those horses a bit better. For example, Winks and Very Elegant and those sorts of horses, Nature Strip, they do market themselves to a certain degree, but why not every horse? Let's be promoting the horse in the schools and trying to get more people that are not from a racing background involved in the sport. Because I guess if you got asked to come and work in a stable or go and work in a restaurant and you had no experience in either, you would probably, as somebody that's not involved in horse racing, you'd probably take your chances that you might be able to know how to work in a bar, but you'd be worried to start working with horses if you've never worked with them before. That's that's the barrier we need to break down. The easy solution is to get people from overseas, but eventually that well will empty as well if we keep going back to the same well.
Now you talk about whether you're going to choose working in hospitality or working for a racing stable. I think another thing too, another completely different argument, Corey, is track work times. Like, why so early in the morning? By having that 6 days a week, that time, not attractive to a lot of people anymore.
No, and that's true. And I guess there are still some people that come in and do early track work and then go to a 9 to 5 job as well.
That's right. Yep.
So, or their jockeys come in and do track work and then they go to the races. So I do think there is arguments on both sides, but it's probably come to a point where the people in charge need to make some decisions on where are the next generation of people going to come from, and let's spend some money on doing that while the industry is vibrant at the moment and we have that extra money that we can use on it. So that's my view anyway. I mean, I'd prefer to see a couple of $1 million go into making sure we have more staff and education than putting an extra couple of million on top of the big races, because especially if the international raiders are going to come and take that money anyway, we'd rather give it to the Aussies.
Sure, I know what you mean. And do you think the industry is moving forward well enough marketing-wise?
Yeah, I think it did explode during COVID. So, I mean, there is... So, I guess, the industry's exploded, the money in the industry has exploded, wagering's exploded. So, there are some arguments that it's moved so quickly that maybe it hasn't kept up. But obviously they were doing something quite well to have got to this position. So I think, it's a sport that's really thriving and is very healthy across the board. So I think the marketing is good within the industry, but being a marketing person, of course, I think there's room for things to improve in certain areas, and that's the space that I sort of saw an opportunity to get involved in the industry myself.
And just one last one, away from working for Griffith to Kock, what does Corey Smith like to do in his spare time?
I don't have too much of it now. I'm in horse racing, Ben. I've just started I've just started doing a little bit of training. I want to try and run a half marathon because I'm just getting a bit. So I've started doing that. Obviously, like to spend a lot of time with my wife in whatever spare time I do have. I did coach the local state league side in soccer still up until the start of this year, but something had to give timing-wise. We were building a house and a few other things. But, yeah, probably, in short, going to the races, whether I'm working or not, I still see as being a little bit of a, it still doesn't feel like work, even though I'm being paid to do it now. And then I'd say outside of going to the races or going to the local soccer, it would be travel. So I like travelling, like going to new places, going out for dinner, that type of thing. So pretty average life really, Ben, outside of racing.
Corey Smith, thanks for joining me, mate.
No worries. I've also got a question for you, Ben. How do you fit in the time? Every time I go to the races, you're at the races, whether it be a Tuesday in Echuca or a Saturday at Flemington, you're at all of the events. How do you manage to do that?
I work casually with the AFL with my footy job, and I'm very lucky that a lot of the clubs appreciate what I'm doing. Like when I saw you at Cranbourne, the marketing manager, Rowan, at Cranbourne invited me down for lunch. So obviously I'm appreciating what I'm doing. Is that what you wanted to know? Or?
No, that's good, mate. You're doing a great job. I think it's really good for the industry. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Ta.
Thank you.